Hello, aviation operations students. Welcome to week 12. For day 1, there will be 3 mini lectures, and day 2 will be a little lighter, and we will also be having a quiz on day 2. I'll talk about that a little bit more. So let's begin our lecture. So week 12 will be covering human resources, and this first lecture is going to focus on employment. But a reminder, there will be a quiz on Friday. If you have a conflict, be sure to let me know in advance. And it covers the material since the last quiz, not since the exam, but since the last quiz. It will focus primarily since the exam, but it may cover some frequently missed questions that were on the exam that were not on quiz 1. Also, the business planning module, I will not have everything loaded for day 2 by Sunday night. But probably on Monday or Tuesday, I will get the business plan module loaded, as well as the remainder of day 2. There will not be a synchronous session at the end of this week. We have a different speaker, and we're going to use a different model. So be looking for that in day 2 as part of the day 2 activities. So one of the things to think about is aviation, the pipeline concept, that in the aviation field, turnover is high. Jobs are often a stepping stone to future positions elsewhere. So you come in as maybe cleaning airplanes at night, then you become a CFI, then you become a regional pilot, then you become a major airline pilot. Now that is only one of very many processes, but it is a pipeline that takes you off into your end goal, and you have to earn hours before then. So the control points, the places that impact the pipeline, are recruiting and identifying prospects that would work with your business, selecting and training them, communicating and motivating with them, and then a very important step, evaluating. And evaluating is not just being critical of people and how they're doing. It's, if you look at it on a growth model, you look at what strengths does this person have, and also what areas could they use some improvement with. And the next year, you look to see, or 6 months or 3 months, however often you're evaluating them, have they started moving in that direction? And then you should compensate them accordingly. If there's an opportunity to promote and they're ready to do that. But if things don't work out, do you need to look at discipline? Do you need to look at separating that person from your company? So let's take a look at how you motivate and keep people longer, because that is important. If they're going through the pipeline and they're only there a year at a time, how can you keep at least some of the people for a longer time? Well, one of the things is compensation, especially pay. There are many models. Some do minimum wage, saying, hey, you're earning your hours. Some do hourly commissions. Some do a base salary. Some do just a salary, and others do a base salary with hourly commissions if it becomes more than that. An hourly wage. And then benefits, anything from no benefits at all to full, health benefit package. Also potentially being able to use the aircraft at a discounted rate or something that helps you build your hours. So you have to look at the whole package together and make sure it meets where you want to go. One of the things you have in aviation are employees with multiple roles. And there are 2 models to do that: one rate for everything, or different wages for different roles. For example, someone might be a flight instructor. They might also be the safety officer. They might also do some charter flying. So how are they going to be paid? Are you going to give them one base salary that covers everything, or are you going to pay them different rates for the different hours they work? And if you're going to do that, then you have to have a tracking system that allows you to do that. Qualified labor for aviation's in short supply. And so let us take a quick look at that spreadsheet or that page. Sorry about that, I don't have it on top. Now, there we go. So if we look at top areas that are hiring in the transportation industry, top 2, air traffic controllers, airline and commercial pilots. And their median pay is pretty high. Now the starting pay can be low, but it tends to top off pretty quickly. So that's something to keep an eye on. And now back to our PowerPoint. So we've talked about this before. The population is aging. More experienced workers are retiring. And one of the things is that COVID-19, people who weren't planning on retiring for a few years have decided to go ahead and retire now. So that has advanced the retirements, and that makes the demand for experienced workers greater. We have a smaller military. They're not training as many people and sending them out. That used to be a clear pipeline into the airlines, and that is not as big a portion of the pipeline. But one thing I want you to think about is in your small businesses, if you can only pay so much, how else might you attract employees? So when you're looking for an employee, what are the traits you're looking for that particular position? Some of the things we might look for is maturity. Are they someone that you can leave on your own? Do they exhibit professionalism? Are they reliable? Are they dependable? And that is information that you can get from their references. What kind of training have they had? What kind of training might they be willing to do in the future? What are their skills and knowledge? Do they have good communication skills and teamwork skills? Because you want them to be part of your team. When we look, is it time to hire yet? We want to see if everyone is busy all the time. If everyone is busy all the time, everyone is overloaded, then it's probably time to hire a new person. If not, consider why, and if you can improve that by better matching traits to work needing to be done. Is everybody's not busy all the time, but there is work that's not quite being done? Do people need additional training? Do you need to hire someone with a different skill set? If you have too many employees, you have two options. One, is it time to pare down? Or if you've been thinking about expanding your business, maybe this is the time to do it. When you look at your human resource needs, you need to ask yourself, what jobs need to be done? And what traits, skills, knowledge, or certifications are required? These two jobs here, you can see, yes, they both need pilots. They also need different skill sets. So you need to ask yourself what each person would be expected to do. Do you need more than one person? Will you be hiring them full-time or part-time? Temporary, seasonal, permanent? All of those things need to be decided. And are you looking at someone that has potential for development? And what would you have to offer? Would you provide training for them? Would you send them to workshops or training programs to get the skills they need? As we're seeing airlines and charter companies doing for their pilots, because the demand is so great, they're paying to upgrade them. And another thing to ask is, do they have to be pilots? Often in businesses that are aviation related, people are looking at hiring pilots, but that may not necessarily be the best person for the job. Or would it be desired but not required? Could someone with a disability do the job? What disabilities would be not acceptable? What disabilities would be acceptable? I worked in an office where a person had a hearing impairment, but we were able to get a grant and buy her new hearing aids that we were able to tie through Bluetooth to the phone system, and she was able to successfully handle phone calls from that point on. There are resources that are available to support non-traditional employees. So again, are the types and numbers of personnel desired available? That's one of the challenges in this market, is there's not a lot of people who are necessarily in the pipeline. Can you attract the right person? Can you afford the right type of person? And when will they be needed, and what is the timeline? Some jobs you can hire somebody and they can start in a week. Sometimes you hire people and it may be 3 months before they start, or it will be after they graduate from school. So you need to put that in your timeline. So what now? You've decided it is time to hire. So you need to create a job description for each position you're hiring for. And there are websites such as Monster and Indeed, which will walk you through that process. Consider the regular things that they are required to do as part of the job. And then also think about special activities that you might want them to help with, and put those down as not required, but desired characteristics. Ask yourself if the job description is realistic. If you want someone who is an experienced pilot, an experienced instructor, experienced at event planning, experienced in accounting, There's not a lot of people that are going to fit that. So you have to think about, are you going to hire 2 people part-time that have different skill sets? And if not, what are your priorities? Again, think about what you have to, they really absolutely have to have for the job that's required, and the things that you could do without but you'd like to see, and mark them as preferred. And then you also want to think about your priorities within that preferred when you're skimming through your list and deciding who you want to offer an interview. Before you're offering the job to anybody, you want to make sure you figured out what training, what the schedule is, and what the compensation is, and will there be a different compensation during training as opposed when they come on board? How are you going to advertise the position? And create your list of interview questions. Once you get resumes or applications in, you want to screen your candidates and select the top 2 to 4 to interview. It's hard to set a real firm number and say, well, I'm going to interview 3, because it could be that number 3 and 4 are pretty close. Or you have 2 that just rise so much above everybody else that that's where you want to start. And some of the aircraft that have been submitted. So again, looking at those traits you want: maturity, professionalism, reliability, and dependability. Use your network of friends, employees, other similar businesses, industry contacts. Is there somebody who's thinking they might have to let some people go? And are those people potentially a match for your business? Are you going to look locally, regionally, or nationally? So you have to think about, if it's going to be for a major position in your company and it's national, you might want to either advertise through professional associations or possibly hire a recruiter. If local, you're probably looking at things like employment agencies, either public or private. You can use the job service and list with them for free. You can go with public or private employment agencies. You can list the service with the university to be looking for potential graduates. And again, postings are free at the job service. Talk to colleges and trade schools. Using a private company like LC Staffing will cost you money, but they have a substantial network. They may be able to find you that employee and save you time. You'll pay a little more for that, but sometimes getting the right person, that matters. Places to advertise: Craigslist, newspapers and other media, though that's getting to be very expensive. Professional organizations, especially if someone has a specific skill set, that might be a place you want to look. Indeed, Monster, LinkedIn, other websites that are for networking and job placement. Oops-a-daisy. If you don't want them to know what company it is when they're applying for it, you can use a post office box or anonymous email. You can have a common application form for screening. You can have a very specific job description, but you should respond to every application, because it could be that those top 2 who stand out so much are not willing to come to you for the compensation that's available. So you may have to work down the list. So you always want to make sure that you provide a response. Let everyone know that you have at least received their application. So again, make sure everyone has applied through the same process. That allows you to make sure that you are not sued for wrongful discrimination in hiring process. If your cousin applies, they still have to go through the process. There are some things that you want to have standard on an application form. You want to have information to contact them, previous employers, education and training, the job description, and ask them if they can perform all of the work in the job description, a resume or a curricula vitae if needed, and references. If you have an application form, make sure nothing you ask for addresses a protected class, such as information on gender, marital status, age, height, and weight, unless there are limitations within the job. For example, some aircraft, there's limitations on weight, or you have to be this tall or this short in order to fit in the aircraft. Once you've decided who you're going to interview, agree on a fixed set of questions. You may ask additional questions that come up from it, but you should be asking everyone the same set of questions. Consider involving other staff in their interview, especially if they'd be working as part of a team together. It is a good idea to get a read from someone from that team. Listen to their answers carefully. Take appropriate notes. And the reason the word appropriate is stressed here is because it is important. You may be asked to produce those notes if you are sued for discrimination in hiring, you want to make sure the notes that you took are appropriate to be shared. Encourage them to ask questions. Evaluate if they know your company. This is from a list of 12 steps for assessing a job candidate's suitability, but some of the things in that list, even though it's a relatively recent list, are not actually good practices. But one thing is, have they done some homework on the company? If they haven't bothered to take the time to figure out what your company's like, whether it's small, large, that's something, and don't have any questions for you, that may make you question whether they really want to come work for you. Are they dressed appropriately? And generally a good rule of thumb for that is 1 degree more formally dressed than the position would require them to be. Did the person arrive alone for the interview? That's not really a valid question. They may have transportation issues that are temporary. You should not judge them because someone else drove them to the interview. Did they arrive on time or call ahead to explain any delay? That is going to give you a clue as to reliability. How did they greet you? Are they assertive and confident? Now, they are going to show some nerves, but are they able to speak and communicate and allow you to judge them? Are they argumentative? If you ask them a question and they argue back, that might not be a good sign. Do they have a positive attitude? But the part about the most recent employer, they may have had a really bad employer, so that is not always a good way to check on them. Did they have a positive attitude about your company? Did they seem observant and learning during the interview process? Now, one thing to be aware of is in subcultures, especially Native Americans or people with astigmatisms, may not make eye contact. That doesn't mean that they're not paying attention. So you do need to respect that, but do they appear to be looking around and learning? Did they project enthusiasm, confidence, energy, and dependability? And do they project loyalty, honesty, pride in work, and a desire to offer work and service for the pay received? A few additional questions. Are they qualified to do the job? No matter how much you like them, if they don't have some basic qualifications and are not prepared to be trained for any additional training they need, then they're not the right person. Do they fit into the team you already have? And as I said, that's why it is a good idea to include a coworker in the interview team. Testing and investigating. You want to make absolutely sure that they have any necessary qualifications, that their qualifications are current, especially if it requires an FAA certification. Drug and alcohol screening, physicals that may be required by your insurance company. If it's not, you may want to look into, do you want to do this or not? And who is going to pay for it? Because generally it's not appropriate to apply to ask the person who's applied for the job to pay for that. But what you can do is make hiring them contingent on this. So you can make them an offer, but until they pass the drug and alcohol screening and the physical, you would not be hiring them. Reference checking, are they just okay? One of the problems is a lot of people will not give you much information about people because they are worried about being sued. So telephoning is a good way to do it. Email, you don't always get honest information. Make sure you have specific questions that are related to the job description. And then a couple of things you can ask is about reliability, dependability, or if they would hire the person back again. That often will tell you something. They may not be able to tell you the details of it, but you also have to take into the account that they may not have been a good employer as well. Background checks and credit checks. Are you going to run them? And if you do, what are you going to do if the results don't come back as yes or no, they passed it? They give you information. So if someone's been unemployed for a while or has been a college student and their credit's not the best, is that going to keep you from hiring them? If not, then there's probably not a reason to do a credit check. Background checks are a good idea, especially if they may potentially be flying with students who are minors. So that is something you should consider if you would do that or not. And that is the end of the first lecture. The second lecture in human resources will cover laws and regulations in hiring. So thank you very much for paying attention to the first of 3 lectures, and be back to talk to you about that shortly.